Welcome to Dark Verse, where the veil between reality and nightmare is thinner than you think. I'm Isaac Nightshade, your guide through the eerie, the inexplicable, and the terrifying truths hiding in plain sight. Tonight, I invite you on a journey, one you might not return from. These aren't just ghost stories. These are encounters, legends, and horrors rooted in reality. From haunted hotel rooms and whispering mirrors to faceless entities in psychiatric wards, these tales blur the line between the known and the unspeakable. So turn off the lights, silence your doubts, and let your fear lead the way. Because once you enter the dark verse, you're never truly alone again. And if the shadows call to you, subscribe and stay a while. Story 1. The Red Pines Inn was nothing more than a humble stop for travelers winding through the sleepy mountain roads. Perched just past mile marker 47, the place had 6 visible rooms and a 7th no one talked about. You wouldn't see it listed on the check-in form. You wouldn't see a key for it on the board. Yet the staff always acted like nothing was missing, like room 7 never existed. And that's where the horror begins, because sometimes it did. I stayed at Red Pines in the fall of 1993. I was driving cross-country, had just come from a funeral in Portland. My nerves were thin, and all I wanted was sleep. The night had a heavy mist, the kind that doesn't quite fall like rain, but clings to your windshield like breath. I pulled into the lot just after midnight. The woman at the front desk was older, too old to be managing night shifts. Her hair was coiled tight behind her head, and she had the kind of face you don't forget. Not for its beauty, but because it felt out of time. "Just passing through?" she asked without looking at me. "Yeah," I said. "Just one night." She handed me a brass key with a cracked leather tag. Room 4. As I turned to go, I noticed something odd on the wall behind her. A space where the row of keys skipped a number. The slots were arranged in perfect order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 8. Not 7. "Missing one?" I asked, nodding toward it. She didn't smile, didn't blink. "Some doors are better left closed." I forced a chuckle, thinking she was joking, but her expression told me otherwise. That night I tried to sleep. I really did. But there was something about the room. The walls felt thinner than they should have been, like they were made of cardboard. I could hear creaks and footsteps, not above me, but beside me, like a mirror image. At first, I thought it was the guest in room 5, but the footsteps never matched the pacing of the other room. They were slower, dragging, almost deliberate, and they stopped right beside my headboard wall. It was after 2 a.m. when I heard the knock. Not on my door, but from inside the wall. 3 soft knocks. I sat up, heart thudding. I waited, holding my breath. Then again, knock, knock, knock. I put my ear to the wall. The air on the other side felt wrong, colder, like winter lived inside there. I stepped into the hallway hoping to spot someone. I wanted to catch a prankster, but the corridor was dead still. No footsteps, no voices, just rows of shut doors. Then I saw it. Down the hall, past room 6, where there should have been nothing but wall, there was now another door. Dark wood. Room 7. It hadn't been there before. The plaque was scratched and warped. The number 7 looked etched by hand, as if gouged into the wood with something sharp. I walked toward it. Every instinct told me not to, that I was slipping out of something safe and into something ancient. But my feet kept moving. I put my ear to the door. Silence. Then, a long, low breath from the other side. It didn't sound human. I stumbled backward, heart hammering in my throat, and rushed back into my room. I told the front desk lady in the morning. Her face paled. "You didn't open it, did you?" she whispered. "Number, but the door, why is it there?" "It's not always there," she said, almost too quiet to hear. "Only when it wants to be." She leaned in. "They say room 7 was sealed shut in 1962. A woman disappeared inside it. No signs of a break-in, no body, no blood, just gone. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want them. I left the inn that morning, but as I pulled out of the parking lot, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The hallway light flicked on behind the curtain. and for just a moment I saw a figure watching from the window. It was room 7. And it wasn't empty. Story 2. My name is Callum Hart. I never meant to be the kind of man who tells ghost stories. I'm not some campfire tale guy or a paranormal junkie. But after what I saw, no, after what I survived, I think there are things in this world that don't belong to it. And some of them whistle. It started with a newspaper ad. I was broke, in between jobs, and desperate for a place to live that didn't cost much. The listing was simple. Caretaker needed. Quiet, remote property. Room and board provided. Basic maintenance required. Apply in person. It was about 60 miles outside Fargo, deep in farmland. When I arrived, the house looked, well, fine. Nothing spooky, just old. White paint peeling in strips, a front porch that groaned with every step, and tall wheat fields that moved like water in the wind. An old man met me on the steps. He introduced himself as Mr. Langley. Long beard, long coat, didn't say much. He looked me over, nodded once, and handed me a brass key. You're the first to last past 3 nights, you get paid double, he said. I raised an eyebrow. Why? People run off or something? He didn't laugh. They don't run off, he said. They just don't stay. He turned and walked to his truck. I watched the dust trail disappear for nearly 5 minutes after he drove away. The house was simple. 2 floors, 1 working bathroom, wood stove for heat. Upstairs had 2 rooms, mine and a locked guest room. I was told not to open the locked room. Nothing in there but dust and regrets, Langley had muttered. I didn't ask questions. I just needed a roof and some time. The first night was uneventful. Crickets chirped. Coyotes howled once or twice. But otherwise, silence. It was the second night when the whistling began. I was lying in bed drifting off when I heard it. A single clear note. Human. From outside. Just one long whistle, then silence. I sat up, heart beating in the quiet. I told myself it was the wind. Maybe something through the trees. Then I heard it again. Only this time, it was coming from upstairs. I stepped out of my room and looked toward the locked door. There it was again. Whistle, pause, whistle. Like someone standing just behind that door, blowing a slow, chilling tune. The next morning, I asked Langley about it. He came by once every 2 days with groceries and mail. He didn't get out of his truck this time. You heard it? He said. Yeah, upstairs like someone was... Don't answer it, he cut in. Whatever it plays, don't mimic it. Don't whistle back. That's how it knows. I laughed nervously. You're serious? His eyes didn't blink. You hear a third whistle? He asked. Pack your bags. That night I wore earplugs, took a sleeping pill, did everything to drown it out. But some sounds don't need ears to reach you. It came again, clear as glass, louder this time. Whistle, whistle, whistle. 3. I opened my eyes in the dark. No wind, no rain, just a tune I didn't recognize, drifting through the air like a slow, sweet lure. I got out of bed. The hallway was darker than usual, like the bulbs were dimmed by something you couldn't see. I approached the locked door. The keyhole glowed faintly. No light, just awareness, as if something inside was watching through it. I didn't open it. I just stood there, paralyzed, as the whistling stopped. Then I heard breathing. Not mine. It was on the other side of the door, soft, rhythmic, and too close. Turned and ran back to my room, shut the door, shoved a dresser in front of it, and stayed up until dawn. Day 3. I didn't wait for Langley. I called him. He answered after the first ring. You stayed? He asked. I didn't whistle back, I said. But I heard 3. What happens now? Did you see it? No. He paused. Then it's still trying. I packed my things, but something was wrong. When I tried to leave, the key wouldn't turn. The front door jammed like it was being held shut. I went to the back, same thing. I even tried breaking a window. Wouldn't crack, wouldn't budge. The whole house had gone heavy, not in weight, in presence. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the corner of my room, flashlight pointed at the door, dresser still pressed against it. At 2:14 a.m., the whistling returned. But it wasn't from upstairs. It was coming from my room. The closet. Slow. Careful. A rising tune, as if someone was learning how to whistle by mimicking a lullaby. I froze. Then I heard it. Bare feet on wood, stepping toward me in the dark. No sound except the whistle. I turned the flashlight toward the closet and there was nothing. No figure. No movement. Just the door. Open a crack. And behind it, the sound of scratching. Something trying to whistle and smile at the same time. I snapped. I tore open the closet, but it was empty. I ran downstairs, door be damned. I grabbed a fire poker from the stove and smashed the window. With all my strength. This time it cracked. I forced my way out, cutting my arm on the glass, and ran barefoot into the field. Behind me from the second floor window, room 2, my room, stood a figure. Tall, unmoving, whistling. And though I couldn't see its face clearly, I swear it didn't have a mouth. Just dark, cracked skin where lips should have been. And yet, the tune kept playing. Mr. Langley found me the next morning at a diner 15 miles away, still barefoot, bleeding, and shaking like a leaf. He didn't ask questions. He handed me cash in an envelope and said, "That's your double." I never went back, and for years I didn't speak of it. But sometimes when I'm about to fall asleep, I hear it again. That soft, luring whistle, not outside, not far, but right there, in the closet. Story 3. Her name was Margaret Weller. She had taught second grade for 42 years in the city and finally decided to retire where the world could no longer knock on her door. She bought the old cottage outright, tucked into the pine forest where the trees grew so tall they bent over the roof like watchful giants. It was the kind of home you'd find on postcards. Stone chimney, creaky front steps, and wooden beams that groaned in the night. Perfect for a quiet life. Margaret was alone, but she didn't mind. She had her books, her teapot, and the company of chickadees that gathered by the window. It wasn't until her third night that the peace began to shift. It started with scratching, just faint at first, like the claws of a raccoon under the floor. She dismissed it. After all, woodland critters were expected in places like this. But by the fifth night, the scratching was accompanied by something else. A voice, so soft she thought it was her mind playing tricks on her. It called out from the planks beneath her living room rug. Miss, are you there?" It was a child's voice, a little girl, whispering. Margaret stood frozen the first time she heard it. She'd been pouring tea when the voice floated up like steam. "Miss Weller, I can't breathe. I'm cold." The teacup fell from her hand and shattered. And the next day, she called the local pest guy, a man named Doug. Middle-aged, cheerful, he did a full inspection. No signs of rats, no pipes that'd make that kind of noise. "You sure it wasn't the wind?" Margaret wanted to believe it was, but that night the girl spoke again. And this time, she cried. Soft, wet sobs, muffled by earth and timber. "Please, yes, it's dark down here. I want to come out." Margaret trembled in bed, unable to move. Her old bones stiffened with terror, yet a deeper instinct stirred in her. She'd taught dozens of children. She knew what real crying sounded like. The next morning, she peeled back the rug. Just old planks, nailed down with square iron heads, dusty and worn. But in the center, one board had a small handprint in the dust. Small, as if left by a child, and it wasn't there the day before. Margaret tried to ignore it. She left the house each day for walks, visited the local general store, drank tea at the edge of the woods. But come sundown, the voice returned, each time more desperate. "Miss Weller, are you angry with me? Is that why you won't open the floor?" She started sleeping in a chair far from the rug, but even then the crying followed her, trailing from the floorboards like a draft. On the 8th night, she snapped. She grabbed a crowbar from the shed, threw back the rug, and started prying. Each board she lifted groaned like a coffin lid. She dug for hours. Sweat drenched her nightgown. Her arms burned with exhaustion. And then, her crowbar hit something. Not stone, not dirt. Wood. She'd uncovered a second floor, an older level beneath the house, a crawl space made of thick pine panels, and carved into it a name. Emily. Margaret froze. She knew that name. Emily Rollins, a girl from her second grade. Class in 1952, a quiet child. Blonde hair, pale cheeks, barely spoke. She had disappeared one day after school, walked out the front doors and never made it home. They never found her body. Police assumed she'd been taken. Her parents moved away soon after. But Margaret always wondered. Now, as she stared at the name beneath her floor, she began to remember things. Little things, like how Emily had always lingered after class, how she'd drawn the same house over and over again, this cottage, before Margaret had ever even seen it, how Emily once said, "I want to live with you forever, Miss Weller." The crying returned, louder, directly from the hole. Margaret leaned in and saw a single pale eye staring up from the cracks. "Don't leave me again," it whispered. She screamed and fell backward, hitting her head on the hearth. Darkness swallowed her. When she awoke, it was morning. The hole was gone, the floor completely intact, the rug laid flat. No tools, no debris. It was like nothing had ever been touched. But on the table next to her cup was a drawing. Crayon, old paper, a stick figure woman beside a child. The child was labeled Emily, the woman, Miss. They were holding hands, standing in front of the cottage. A sun hung in the corner, but it had no face, just black scribbles. The next night, the voice didn't cry. It laughed. "Now you remember," it said. "Now you'll stay." The scratching turned to pounding. The whole floor shook as if dozens of fists beat from underneath. She tried to run, but the front door wouldn't open, nor the back. Every window showed darkness, no trees, no sky, only blackness, like the house was floating in a void. The fireplace lit itself, and standing in front of it was Emily, or something that looked like her. Hair damp with soil, skin gray, dress rotted and stitched to her like a second skin. Her eyes were wide, one dangled loosely from the socket. "You said I could stay," she whispered. "You said forever." The last page of Margaret's journal was found months later when the home was repossessed. No one ever saw her again. The entry read, "I didn't remember. I didn't know. She followed me all these years and I didn't see her. I think I brought her here. I think she waited. And now the floor sings to me in her voice. I'm not afraid anymore. I just want to sleep. I just want peace." The cottage is still there, but no one buys it. At night, passing, hikers sometimes report hearing a woman's voice calling from inside. Sometimes it's crying, sometimes laughing, and sometimes just whispering, "Please don't leave me again." Story 4. There's a rule in Granger's Hollow. Come October 13th, no one stays out past dark. Doors are bolted. Candles are placed in windows. And not a single soul walks near the eastern cornfield. No matter what they hear, no matter who they hear, they call it the Watch. I didn't know that when I moved there. My name's Mason Wyatt. Journalist. City-born, raised on sarcasm and streetlights. My editor sent me to Granger's Hollow to write a human interest piece on small-town Halloween traditions. What I found was a story no one wanted told, but I'm going to tell it anyway, because people should know what's buried out there. It started normal enough. The town was friendly in that eerie Stepford way, smiles that lasted a little too long, hands that held your arm while shaking. Everyone knew each other. Everyone seemed to watch each other. The sheriff, Bill Grady, warned me first. "If you're staying past the 12th, he said, you get your groceries early. Lock your doors, turn off your porch light, and whatever you hear, ignore it." Even if someone's screaming? I asked. He didn't smile. Especially then. I brushed it off as superstition, until I met old Eliza Horn. She ran the antique store and had lived in Granger's Hollow since before the war. She was sharp as a tack, but wouldn't look you in the eye when she told a lie. "The harvest man," she said, "ain't a man at all. He's what came before us, before the town, before language. We just gave him a name so we could sleep at night." I laughed nervously. "Like a boogeyman?" Her stare cut the smile right off my face. "He walks when the veil thins, when the corn is tallest, when blood has gone unpaid." That night I went to the edge of town, just to look. The eastern cornfield was wrong. It didn't sway like the others. The stalks were blacker, thicker. They towered 12 feet high, even though no one had tended them in years. A rusted scarecrow stood in the middle, arms out, head low. No wind, yet the fabric on it fluttered like something breathed underneath. I turned back fast. On October 13th, it began. I was staying in a room above the diner. At sundown, I noticed all the windows around town glowed with candlelight. The streets emptied. Even the street lamps were off. Not broken, just off. At 10:07 p.m., I heard it. The first whistle, it wasn't a tune, just two notes. Soft, like someone exhaling through a flute. Then a voice, far away, male, calm. "Don't hide." I ran to the window. Nothing, no people, no cars. But the corn at the edge of town swayed violently, as if something huge moved within it. Then I saw it, a figure, stepping out of the stalks. At first glance, it looked like a man, thin, tall, maybe 7 feet, wore a hat, long coat, but his legs bent, wrong, like they were made of sticks and his arms dangled too low. I watched him step into the road, tilt his head at the candlelight from nearby homes, then point one long finger toward mine. I hit the floor. He never knocked. He didn't need to. The lights flickered. The room got colder than I've ever felt. And through the floorboards, I heard it again, whistling, and then whispering, "Harvest, harvest, harvest." At dawn, the town came alive again, like nothing happened. Kids walked to school. Farmers opened shops. No one spoke about it. No one looked me in the eye. I confronted Sheriff Grady. "What the hell is going on?" He pulled me into his office, closed the blinds, locked the door. Then he told me the truth. In 1913, Granger's Hollow faced starvation. Crops died. Animals perished. People began to starve. That's when the harvest man came. Not in flesh, in dreams and visions. He promised abundance, a permanent harvest. If the town gave him one child a year, on October 13th, they agreed. The corn grew, the livestock multiplied, people prospered, but it came at a price. Every year a child went missing, always from outside the hollow, orphans, travelers, runaways, unnoticed, unmourned, until 1961, when the chosen child escaped. He ran into the woods and vanished. The offering was missed. That year the harvest man came into town, took 5 people, left them hanging from the corn, skinned and hollowed, so they made. So, a rule, if the offering is missed again, everyone pays. It's that night I planned to leave, but when I returned to my room, my bags were gone, replaced with a burlap sack, and a note, "You're this year's offering." I ran. I didn't think, just sprinted to the cornfield. I thought if I could just hide past the edge, I'd be safe. But that's where he was waiting, not walking, standing, still as death. Then he raised one arm, bent at the wrong angle and pointed at me. I heard the whistling again, and my vision went dark. I woke up in the corn, naked, covered in blood that wasn't mine. Next to me, bones, child-sized, dozens. I stumbled to the road, made it to a gas station 2 towns over. When the clerk asked what happened, I said the only thing I could, I missed the harvest. Now, every October 13th, I light a candle in my window, and I never look outside after dark, because sometimes when the wind dies down, I still hear that whistle and a voice that whispers, "You owe me." Story 5. Lake Ursa was never meant for visitors. It wasn't a vacation lake or a postcard lake. It was remote, snowbound for most of the year, and the kind of place the wind never left alone. In the late 70s, the government built a small hydropower substation on the edge of the lake, meant to serve a few research outposts and passing weather crews. The facility had room for 2 men at a time, but by 1983, it was down to 1. That winter, that man was me. My name is Elliot Cray. I'm writing this in 2025 after decades of silence because the past doesn't leave you alone. Not when it's trapped beneath the ice. The station ran on 10-day rotations. You'd get flown in by helicopter with food, books, backup batteries. No TV, no radio, just silence, broken only by the buzz of the turbines and the crunch of snow beneath your boots. I arrived in early December. The temperature dropped to -40 within days, but I didn't mind. I was used to the cold. What I wasn't used to was the dreams. They started on the 3rd night. A boy, no more than 10, dressed in old-fashioned clothes, knit sweater, corduroy pants, bare feet, pale skin, almost gray. His eyes were too big, black like a deer's. In the dream, he just stared at me through the window. Didn't knock, didn't speak. He just stood there. Even in the dream, I felt cold. Not from the snow outside, from something else. Something inside the station. I tried to shake it off, chalked it up to isolation, sleep deprivation, cabin fever. But then the footsteps began. On the 4th night, I woke to the unmistakable sound of small feet walking across the floorboards in the hallway outside my room. Slow, careful, not bare feet, wet feet. I grabbed the flashlight and opened the door. Nothing there, just melting snow tracks on the wooden floor, leading to the front window. And outside, standing beyond the glass, the boy was real. I didn't sleep again. I set up motion sensors by the door. I checked the heating ducts. I even locked the closet, but it didn't stop. Every night at 2:14 a.m., he returned, always in silence, always watching. I checked the station records, and that's when I found the incident report. January 1960, Lake Ursa Station frozen over for 27 days, 1 technician missing, no sign of forced entry, exit door locked from inside. Final log entry reads, "The boy keeps asking me to come outside." My blood went cold. I dug deeper. Locals had their own stories. An Inuit woman from a nearby settlement remembered a boy who fell through the ice in the 1950s. He'd wandered too far while chasing a rabbit. They never found his body, but every winter, strange things happened near the lake. Scratches on windows, footprints with no origin. And those who stayed too long, they either disappeared or went mad. On my 7th day, the generator failed. The backup lights flickered. I went to the panel, pulled open the battery casing, and saw frost on the inside. The temperature in the station had dropped below freezing, despite the heaters running. Then I heard the whisper, "It's warm down here." I turned, no one. But there, in the corner of the room, the air shimmered, like heat above asphalt. And I saw him, just for a moment, standing by the hatch to the basement, smiling. I snapped. I called for extraction, but the storm had blocked air traffic. No one could reach. Me for 48 hours. I was alone, trapped, with him. That night, I boarded up the windows. I locked the doors, and I did something I never thought I'd do. I talked to him. "Who are you?" I whispered into the silence. Nothing. But at 2:14 a.m., the closet door creaked open. Inside, not my coat, but his. Still wet, still dripping, still cold. And underneath it, a photograph, a black and white image of me, sleeping, with the boy standing at the foot of the bed. I don't remember leaving the station, but they found me 2 days later, barefoot, wandering the snow. No coat, no gloves, just a camera clutched to my chest. I had frostbite in all 10 fingers. The camera had 3 photographs. The last one? Me, taken from inside the lake, looking down through the ice. The boy was beside me, smiling. I never worked again, but sometimes when I dream, I see the lake, and I hear his voice under the ice saying, "It's warm down here, Elliot. You'll never be alone again." Story 6. The mirror was beautiful, tall, oval-shaped, framed in tarnished silver vines with roses that curled around the glass like it was being swallowed. It stood over 6 feet and weighed more than 150 pounds. The kind of thing you'd see in old movies or dream homes, the kind that looked expensive. My wife Danielle found it at an estate sale after we moved into our first home. She thought it would bring character to our hallway. I thought it was creepy from the start. Too tall, too old. It didn't reflect light quite right. I used to joke it didn't reflect truth either. That was before the blinking started. The first time I noticed I was brushing my teeth, it was early. Sunlight hadn't come through the windows yet, and the hallway was dim. I glanced over at the mirror while rinsing my mouth and saw myself staring back. But my reflection hadn't moved. I blinked. It didn't. I smiled. It kept staring. Then just as I turned away, it blinked once, delayed, deliberate. I froze, shook my head, told myself it was lack of sleep. But it happened again. And again. And then it smiled on its own. I didn't tell Danielle at first. Didn't want to worry her. But a week later, she asked me if I ever felt off when walking past it. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "Sometimes, I feel like I already passed it. Like I'm catching up with my reflection. Or like someone else is using my face." That night, I covered the mirror with a blanket. The next morning, the blanket was folded neatly beside it. The dog refused to go near it. She'd bark and growl every time she passed it, tail between her legs, ears flat. One night, we found her whimpering under the bed. Her eyes were bleeding, scratched raw. The vet said it was self-inflicted. She clawed at her own face. The vet also said something else. She was terrified. Danielle started acting strange soon after. She'd zone out while looking into the mirror, sometimes for hours. I'd ask her what she saw. "Not me," she said. I tried moving it to the garage, but when I pushed it onto the dolly, the glass vibrated. Not cracked, shimmered, like water, like it didn't want to leave. When I finally got it outside and locked the garage, I felt better, like something had lifted off the house, until 2:14 a.m. that night, when I woke to find Danielle missing from the bed. I found her standing in front of the mirror in the garage, naked, smiling. Her eyes were bleeding. "Danielle?" She didn't respond, just raised one hand and touched the glass. Her reflection did not match. It moved first. It winked. And that's when the mirror pulled her in. I mean that literally, like water. The surface rippled and Danielle was yanked through it in a fraction of a second. Gone. I screamed, hit the glass, threw the dolly into it. Nothing happened. It was just a mirror again. The police didn't believe me. They called it a mental break. Danielle was listed as missing. No signs of struggle. They said I was grieving in a weird way. They forced me to undergo psychiatric evaluation. They took the mirror into evidence. But 2 weeks later, the officer who signed it into evidence shot himself. Before he died, he left a note. "I see myself in my dreams, but it's not me." He says I'm the copy. They buried him with a closed casket. His face was missing, like it had been peeled off. I spent the next year trying to track down the mirror's origin. I found 3 prior owners, all dead. One hanged himself in front of it. One set fire to her home with her children inside. One vanished, last seen staring into the glass for 13 hours straight. I visited the estate it came from. The woman who sold it remembered a name carved in the wood at the back of the frame. I scraped off the silver leaf. One word. Spiegel, German. It means mirror. But in old folklore, der Spiegelmann was a demon, said to live in cursed glass, not just mimicking you, replacing you. One glimpse at your soul, and he begins to copy it. Once perfect, he switches places. Forever. Now I don't trust mirrors. Not any of them. I cover everyone I see. And yet, sometimes in shop windows, I catch a glimpse of myself walking a little too far behind. Sometimes I blink, then see my reflection still watching. And just once, I saw Danielle again, on a bus window, smiling, waving, but the bus had no passengers. I'm leaving this note behind in case it happens to me. If one day I show up different, if I stop blinking at the right time, if I start smiling for no reason, don't trust me, because I might not be the one looking back. Story 7. My name is Dr. Alan Reeve. I was one of the observers in the Polaris sleep study. They said it was a civilian behavioral experiment, said it was sanctioned, said it was safe. It wasn't. It was a controlled descent into madness, or, worse, possession. And now I'm writing this because I don't believe the experiment ever ended. We recruited 5 volunteers, all male, ages 20 to 38, with no major health issues. Each signed a full waiver and were promised $5,000 if they lasted 15 days in the chamber. The setup was basic. A sealed, windowless room with beds, food, running water, and speakers connected to the observation booth. There were no clocks, no sunlight, and most importantly, no escape. Oxygen was fed in, so was a custom chemical compound dubbed N13. The gas was said to suppress REM cycles, keeping the brain stimulated and alert, without causing the crash of caffeine or amphetamines. Days 1 through 3 went smoothly. They played cards, joked, talked about girls and jobs. They laughed a lot, but the gas worked. Not a single one showed signs of drowsiness. Day 4, conversation became forced. Participants began pacing. One, Jonathan, started muttering to himself. Another, Louis, covered all the vents with blankets. When asked why, he said, "The air is too loud." We increased the dose. Day 6, appetite dropped. Skin began to pale. They stopped talking to each other, just sat staring at the walls. Then, at 2:33 a.m., we heard the first scream. It wasn't a panic scream. It was guttural, animalistic. It didn't even sound human. The audio feed caught the following. "He's awake now. He's standing inside me." When we asked who he was, no one answered. But all 5 began crying in unison. Day 7. The lighting in the chamber flickered, which was impossible. The circuit was isolated. The temperature dropped to 37 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, impossible. One of the subjects, a man named Corbin, began clawing at the walls with his fingernails. Over and over he whispered, "Get out of me! Get out of me!" His eyes began to bleed. We requested termination of the study. The request was denied. Day 8. Lewis attacked Jonathan. With a spoon, he scooped out one of Jonathan's eyes before the others pulled him away. We used the intercom to demand he stop. He looked up directly into the camera and said, "You can't stop him. He's not in us. He's in you." Security was prepped to go in. They never got the chance. Day 9. The gas stopped being necessary. None of them could sleep anymore, even after the chemical flow ceased. They were hollow, not awake, not tired, just awake too long. That's when one of the camera feeds cut to static. And on the backup monitor, we saw it. A 6th figure. No one knew had entered the room. No security breach. No hidden doors. But there it was, standing in the corner. Tall, blurry, smiling. We scrubbed the footage, frame by frame. In one still, We caught its face, but it had no features, just eyes like black pits and a mouth that extended far too wide. It wasn't a glitch. It was watching them, and maybe watching us too. Day 10, they stopped eating, stopped speaking, just sat with their backs to the camera, all five, motionless. And then, at 2:14 a.m., same time every night, they all stood up, together, turned to face the wall, and started whispering something, on loop, over and over. It took us an hour to decipher. I dreamed I was awake, and that was the lie. Day 11. The glass in the control booth cracked. From the inside, no one was near it. That same night, the lead technician was found hanged in the surveillance room. Written Toninen, his blood on the wall. He's in my skin now. The cameras failed. We lost all visual feed, but the audio remained, and it kept playing the whispers until one of the participants said clearly, "You should have let us sleep." Day 12, all five were dead. No cause found, no wounds, no signs of trauma. But their faces were frozen in expressions of sheer terror. And their eyes? Each and every one was missing. Gone. Sockets hollow. No blood. As if taken. The project was buried. Literally, the entire floor of the hospital was sealed off, and the room filled with concrete, but the whispers never stopped. To this day, nurses report voices coming through the vents in that wing. People sleepwalk into the hallway. One man even clawed his eyes out in the elevator, muttering, "He's standing inside me." I'm not writing this to warn you. I'm writing this because I haven't slept in 7 days, and tonight I saw him in the mirror, smiling. And I finally understand. He only needs one to wake. Story 8. I was 13 when it happened. 8th grade, Jefferson Middle School. The kind of place with fluorescent lights that buzz too loud, teachers that hate their jobs, and a smell that never quite goes away. Kids made up stories all the time to scare each other. Bloody Mary in the girls' bathroom. The teacher that drank embalming fluid. But the scariest story? The girl in locker 119. They said if you knocked on it 3 times, you'd hear. Someone knocked back. They said if you whispered your name into the vents, she'd whisper it back, at night in your dreams. And they said if you opened it, you'd trade places with her. Of course, it was just a story until it wasn't. I didn't believe in ghosts. I believed in math, video games, and the fact that school sucked. But one day during second period science, my friend Lucas leaned over and whispered, "It knocked back." I rolled my eyes. "I'm serious." He said, "Me and Tiff knocked on 119. We heard it, from inside." "You probably knocked on a vent." He shook his head. "Locker 119 doesn't exist on the map." I checked. He was right. Lockers ran 110, 111, 112, and then jumped to 120. No one in 119, but it was there. Between 118 and 120, narrower than the others, scratched, bent, like it had been, sealed, no lock, just smooth metal, welded edges, a tiny rusted vent at the top. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. So the next day, after school, I went back. The hallway was empty. I stood in front of it. 3 knocks, tap, 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 silence. Then, tap, tap, tap. I froze, my skin crawled. Then something else, a whisper, faint, childlike, right against the metal. "Let me out." I backed away fast, told myself it was a prank, a speaker, a setup. But I dreamed that night of a girl in a dark, narrow space, knees tucked to her chest, pale skin, long hair. She looked right at me, smiling. "You're my friend now." Tori, the next day, Lucas was gone. Just gone. No one said anything. No announcement. No substitute seat. His locker was emptied. His name erased from the class list. Tiff wouldn't speak. wouldn't look anyone in the eye. When I finally cornered her after gym, she whispered, "He opened it." He let her out. I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, closer now, inching forward in the dark. The dreams weren't dreams anymore. She started showing up in reflections, first in the bathroom mirror, then in my locker door, smiling. Always smiling. I went to the principal, asked him point blank, "What's in locker 119? He stared at me, then said, "There is no locker 119. I took him into the hallway, showed him. It was gone. Where it had been yesterday, nothing. Just clean wall, like it had never been there. But that night in my dream, I was in the locker. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, just darkness, cold metal, no air. And outside the vent, I saw myself, looking in, but not me, a version of me with that same smile. "You're my friend now," he whispered. Then he walked away and left me in the dark. I woke up, panting, drenched in sweat, looked in the mirror. It smiled first. It's been years since then. I'm not sure I'm the real me anymore. Sometimes I forget birthdays, or how my mom smells, or what color my room used to be. I sleep in narrow places now. I crave darkness. And sometimes I dream of the girl, still inside, waiting, smiling. At night, I go back to schools, any school, and I build a locker, number it 119, weld it shut, and wait, because she wants a friend, and I'm tired of being alone. Story 9, I've always been fascinated with urban exploration. Creeping through crumbling factories, forgotten schools, and old hospitals gave me a strange high, like I was trespassing into time itself. So when my friend Megan found the location of St. Augustine, I jumped. The hospital had been closed since 1982. Most of it collapsed after the fire. But according to her maps, Ward B13, the psychiatric wing, was still standing, barely. They said it was where the worst patients were kept, those with violent tendencies, hallucinations, night terrors. We went at night, of course. Flashlights, gloves, cheap masks for the dust, and a camera, because we wanted proof. We should have never stepped inside. The hospital's shell groaned as the wind pushed against it. The walls were cracked like old teeth. The floors buckled with black mold and soot. And the air was wrong, not stale, thick, like it was holding its breath. Megan joked at first, calling it haunted air. But by the time we reached the basement stairwell, she'd stopped smiling. The stairs led down to a door marked B13, authorized staff only. The lock was broken. Inside was darkness so complete, our flashlights looked like dying candles. We entered, and the door shut, behind us. Ward B13 wasn't just a hallway, it was a hive. 10 rooms, 5 per side, each with heavy iron doors and small shattered viewing windows. Scratches covered the walls. Some were words, most were not. Symbols, spirals, numbers and sequences that made no sense. And something else. Tally marks, dozens, hundreds, all over the floor, walls, even the ceiling, as if someone had been counting time with their fingernails. Room 6 had a name carved into the inside of the door. Sarah was here. She's still here. I asked Megan if she saw it too. She didn't answer. She was staring down the hall. "I heard something," she whispered. "What?" Breathing. Then our flashlights died, at the same time, not flickered, died. Complete black. We froze. The silence grew until it became unbearable. Then we heard it, from the last room, room 10, a whisper. "Help me." We turned to run. But the door, the one that brought us in, was gone. Not shut, gone. Just wall. We tried every room. Only room 7 opened. Inside was a mirror unbroken, and scrawled across it in red, "Don't look in her eyes." I wish we listened. Megan looked. She dropped to the floor, shaking, whispering the same word over and over. Needles, needles, needles. There were none, but when I touched her arm, something squirmed under her skin, like something crawling, trying to get out. I pulled her into room 3 and slammed the door, but the lights came back. Diamond soys flickering, and standing outside the door was a woman in a hospital gown, hair down to her waist. No face, just blank skin where it should have been. But I knew she was looking at me because I felt it behind my eyes. She whispered, I was the 18th. Miss, I don't remember getting out. Somehow we were back at the surface. Megan was never the same. She doesn't talk. She doesn't blink. Just draws spirals on her walls, over and over, until her fingers bleed. As for me, sometimes when I look in the mirror, my reflection stutters, lags behind, and I hear her whisper just before I close my eyes at night. You came looking for me. Now we wait, together. They say Ward B13 is sealed now, but sometimes local kids dare each other to find it. They never do, but they always return with strange burns on their fingertips and voices in their heads that weren't there before. Story 10, I was a literature professor at Lancaster University when the Yuri arrived. No return address, just a box, wrapped in brown paper, smelled like mildew and rust. Inside, a leather-bound book. No cover, no title, just strange shifting symbols pressed into the flesh-like binding. It felt warm. Attached was a note written in jagged, frantic handwriting. You were right. It's real, don't read it. I tried. I saw things. I'm not me anymore. It was signed by Thomas Greaves, a colleague who vanished 6 months earlier while researching medieval apocryphal texts in Eastern Europe. At first I thought it was a prank. Then I opened it, and I shouldn't have. When the pages were thin, gray, and blank, at least to the naked eye, but under candlelight, shapes appeared. Not words, not drawings, moving shapes, patterns that squirmed like they were alive. My vision blurred just looking at them. I closed it, and something whispered in the back of my skull. Read me. The first night, I dreamed of a tower that stretched beyond the sky. Black, cracked stone, no door, just a window near the top, pulsing with red light. The second night, I dreamed of myself standing at its base. The third, I was inside. When I opened the book again, the symbols had changed. This time they made sense. Not like language, not like English. More like memory, as if the meanings were being poured directly into me. I saw flashes of ancient rituals, eyes without faces watching through cracks in reality. A sky that bled, and always, the voice, you are mine now. I started seeing things, not just in dreams, reflections that didn't match, shadows where there were none, whispers in foreign tongues coming from under the bed. I stopped eating, stopped going to work. I couldn't think, couldn't sleep. I just kept reading. Even when the pages bled when I turned them. Even when the symbols began appearing on my arms, carved into my skin from the inside. I tried to burn it. The fire went out. I buried it. It was back on my desk the next morning. I threw it in the river. It was waiting in my bed. I smashed it with a hammer. It laughed. My phone stopped working. My house began to rot. The air smelled like copper and sulfur, and the door to my basement opened on its own. Inside, stone steps that hadn't been there before, leading down into blackness. I don't remember walking down, but I woke up there. No walls, just endless space, and a pulsing sound like a heartbeat in the dark. Something stood in front of me, tall, shapeless, dripping with stars and void. It handed me a pen made of bone and whispered, finish writing what I started. Now I know what the book is. It's not a story. It's an infection. It spreads through thought, through meaning. And once you read it, you're a page, and you must add more. That's how it survives. That's how it grows. I've sent it to someone else now, wrapped in brown paper. No return address, because I'm tired, and my part is done. And the book, it never ends. If you ever get a package with no name, no title, no sender, don't open it, don't read it, don't even touch it, because the book doesn't want to be read, it wants to be remembered.